Hello and welcome once again to In Depth with my special guest, the author and broadcaster, David Pawson. David, welcome once again to the programme. Last week we were talking about a massive subject, about the Great Tribulation in Revelation. I'd like us to backtrack if we possibly could, and to ask you quite simply, when Christ returns, will he be human, divine, or will he be both?
Both. He began by being divine, the Son of God. He then became human as well. He didn't cease to be God. He became human as well. And he's stayed that way. He didn't become human for 33 years, like some people think, then go back to being divine. He is still human. Amazingly, this was not only a change for him, but it was a change for God. For the first time, humanity was taken into God. Not just God being taken into humanity, but the reverse is also true. It was a change in God. There was a before and after. Before, God didn't have any humanity in him. Now he has. And when he comes back, he will be the same Jesus who ascended to heaven, the human Jesus who is also fully God. He is both and always will be. The amazing thing to me is that Jesus chose to be born, the only person who ever chose to be. I didn't choose to be born, you didn't. I didn't choose my parents or the social status of my parents. He did. He chose to be born, and not just to become like one of us for 33 years, but forever, to stay that way. And he knew in adopting our humanity, he would never be able to get rid of it, that he would stay that way forever. So he's coming back as fully God, fully man.
Why is it important, do you think, to study in depth the book of Revelation?
Not least because it gives us a balanced picture of Jesus. The gentle Jesus, meek and mild, is usually drawn out of the Gospels. The Jesus who loved people, who heals them, who went about doing good, who died for what he said, and so on. That's only half the story, or a third of it. We need to know what Jesus is like now, and what he's doing now, and where he is now. But above all, we finally get the picture in Revelation of Jesus as king. Now, the world has never seen that. They will. He is prophet in the Gospels. He is priest in the epistles. That's his role now. But he's coming back as King of Kings and Lord of Lords, as the ruler of the world. And he will come back in anger. Now, there were only a few glimpses of his anger in the Gospels. He was very angry when people tried to keep children away from him, very angry when they didn't want him to heal a man on the Sabbath, and supremely angry with those who turned the temple, a house of prayer, into a den of thieves, money changers, and defrauding the public. He was very angry over that. He was angry with a fig tree when he hoped to get some figs. He was hungry and he cursed it. Now, this cursing side of Jesus, this angry side of Jesus, you only glimpse when he was on earth the first time, but the second time it says that people will take one look at his face, at his angry eyes, and they will pray to mountains to fall on them, pray for an earthquake to swallow them up, rather than look into his angry face. He's coming back to deal with evil. Now, many people complained that he didn't deal with evil the first time that he left the world in the same mess it was before he came. Many people say that. Many people are disappointed with Jesus. They say, well, you know, Christianity's been in the world 2,000 years, and is the world any better today than it was? And there's a sense in which that is true. And we have to admit that Jesus did not do everything we wanted him to do on the first time. But there's an interesting fallacy. People say to me, you know, David, why doesn't God destroy all the evil people in the world? And then the rest of us could have a good time, you see.
Good point.
And the fallacy is that if God got rid of everybody who's polluting his world, then I wouldn't be sitting here, and nor would you. It is his patience with us, giving us a chance to be recycled before he recycles the universe, that is the amazing thing. But he's not going to go on being patient forever. He has already fixed a day in his diary when evil is going to be dealt with, and his Son is coming to deal with it. And on his second visit, he's not coming to die for us. He's not coming to save anybody. He's coming to deal with evil and put the world right. And that's good news, unless you are not willing to have yourself put right, and then it's bad news.
Where will Jesus return?
Where? He's coming back to Jerusalem. He's coming back to the same place, in the same way as he went. And we're going to meet him there. Do you know, I went to my grandfather's grave yesterday or the day before, and there are 3 interesting words on his gravestone. They're not from the Bible, they're from an old Methodist hymn. But the words are, there's his name, David Ledger Pawson, died 1934. And then underneath it says, what a meeting. And I'll bet people who read that don't know what he's talking about. He's talking about the biggest Christian meeting that there will ever be. Because we are actually going to meet Jesus when he returns in the air. We're going to meet him because, frankly, there isn't a stadium on earth could hold us all. We're going to meet him up in the sky when he comes back to earth. And what a meeting that'll be. If you don't like noisy meetings, don't be there. There'll be trumpets blowing, archangels shouting their heads off, and I'm not going to be silent. But the beauty of it is, you know, as we finished, I think, our last talk, that those who've already died will get front seats at the big meeting. And then those who are still alive will catch up and they get the back seats. So even if I die before Jesus gets back,
so they're going to be raised from the dead?
Absolutely. In fact, that is the point at which Christians will get new bodies. You don't need a body in heaven, but we do need a body to live again on earth. And here's one of the surprising things about his second coming that many Christians don't even think about. When Jesus comes back to earth, every Christian who's died is coming back to earth with him. We're going to be here a second time. Christians are the only people who are going to live on earth a second time around.
This isn't the new Jerusalem, is it?
No.
This is not the new...
No, we're not talking about that yet. We're talking about this old earth. Jesus is coming back to this old earth.
How are we going to fit in, David?
Well, of course, there'll be a lot of... The population will have died already.
Because there's going to be a lot of people,
because of the big trouble. Well, 1,500 million. But then, that's nothing like the population of the world at the moment.
Staggering though when you think
it's mind-boggling, but it's there. And if all the other predictions of the Bible have come true, I've got to believe that too. And it says, God will bring with him all who have fallen asleep. I've preached at a number of funerals recently, not because I'm a pastor now, but because there were relatives who died. My mother-in-law died at 98. Last words to me were about Jesus. My daughter died at 36 of leukemia. My sister and her husband both died of cancer 2 or 3 years back. I spoke at these funerals and I said they'll be back. Jesus is coming back and he's bringing them back here with him. And you know, people looked at me as if I was preaching Buddhism or reincarnation or something. But I said, this is in the Bible. God will bring with him those who have fallen asleep. So that it's not just Jesus coming for those who are still alive. He's bringing back to earth with him all those who've fallen asleep, died in Christian faith. And that's when we get a brand new body to live on the earth again. Jesus got a new body, came out of the grave with a new body, and we're going to have the same. So this old body, 70 years and 10, it's on the way out. But I'm going to get a new body like his. I can't wait to be 33 again.
I don't want to go radically off the subject here,
No.
but we were talking earlier on in the green room about a piece of doctrine where a comma was put into a verse, and we'd taken this out of context. We were talking about the thief by the side of Christ, and Christ says to him, "Today you will be with me in paradise." That word "today," meaning now. But what we're saying now is that the people are asleep and they will be coming back. So how does this work?
Falling asleep is simply a description of what death looks like. You know, it looks like falling asleep. It doesn't mean they're unconscious. Between his death and resurrection, Jesus was fully conscious. He was without a body, but his spirit was fully conscious and he was very busy. One of the most extraordinary pieces of information in the Bible is that he was preaching to the people who drowned in the days of Noah's flood. Now that is an extraordinary piece of information. It tells us not only that Jesus was fully conscious between death and resurrection, but that People who drowned in Noah's flood were fully conscious and able to listen to him. My daughter is fully conscious this morning. She knows who she is. She knows where she is. She knows who she's with. She can't communicate with me anymore because she hasn't got a body, and we use our bodies to communicate on earth. But I know that she's with Jesus, and she knows she's with Jesus. But she hasn't got a new body yet. She won't get it before the day I get it. We get it together, whether I'm still alive or have already joined her. In other words, could I put it this way? There are 3 phases of human existence, David, not 2. Most people think of this world and the next, or I'm on earth now and I go to heaven. They think in terms of 2, but in fact there are 3. 1, I'm an embodied spirit here and now. The real me is living in this body. I'm an embodied spirit. When I die, this body ceases to be part of me. It's an overcoat. It's left behind, and people can bury it or cremate it. I'd prefer burial, but anyway. In the second phase, I'm a disembodied spirit, as Paul says, unclothed. No longer with a body, fully conscious, memory, everything, but I'm without a body. Phase 3, resurrection, getting a new body on this earth. Now then, Jesus went through all 3 phases more quickly than anybody else does. He went through them in 1 week. The beginning of the week, he was an embodied spirit, a body that had grown up and would have got older and died. He was without a body for 3 days and 3 nights, preaching to the dead, and the dying thief was with him. And then he got his new body, which he still has, and which we'll see when he comes back, which hasn't got any older. He's still 33. This is not his 2000th birthday this year.
Oh, I meant to. Now, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was going to say, so as I get older and older and older and I become more and more decrepit, when I die and I get my new body, I won't stay decrepit, will I?
No, of course not. We're getting a new body like his. And
but what age would I be?
33.
I will be 33 years old.
Don't you look forward to that?
Yeah.
It says in the Bible, this body of our humiliation will be transformed into a body like his glorious body. In your prime. I won't be a decrepit old man.
You're not a decrepit old man now.
I'm on my way, well on my way. I think we better get back to the book of Revelation.
Absolutely.
We're getting right off it. Right.
Now, when Jesus returns, he returns back to Jerusalem.
Yes.
What is the significance of his return to Jerusalem, do you think?
It's the city he loves. It's the city of the great king, he called it. It's God's chosen city on earth. It's the city where his people are. Everything points to that. And he's coming back to that city. And we join him there. Your first free flight to the Holy Land. By an amazing thing, we shall find ourselves there, whether we're dead or still alive. We shall find ourselves with new bodies in the biggest Christian meeting there's ever been. What a meeting. And boy, what rejoicing there's going to be that day.
How are we going to get there?
We shall just go from here to there.
This is obviously then the rapture, yes?
Yes, I believe in the rapture because the word comes from a passage in Paul's letter to the Thessalonians where he says, we shall be caught up to meet him in the air. Now, in the Latin Bible, which was a very old Bible, in the Latin, the word for caught up or snatched up is rapto. And from that we get the word rapture, to be caught up in something. Now, of course, rapture tends to be an emotional high state, but it goes back to that Latin word rapto, which means to be caught up. I believe we shall be snatched up to meet him in the air. The question is when. And when people say to me, David, do you believe in the rapture? What they mean is, do you believe we shall be caught up before the big trouble? But after the big trouble, we shall be caught up. Oh, yes, I'm sure of that.
I think something that is quite interesting, that I think is amazing actually, there are certainly American airline companies that will not allow 2 pilots to fly their aircraft, the pilot and the co-pilot, who are both Christians. Mm-hmm. Both born-again Christians. They will not allow it. They'll allow 1, but not 2.
No. I can believe that, because I've seen bumper stickers on cars in America. If you hear the sound of a trumpet, grab the steering wheel. Same thing, you see. But at least the people who do that believe it and are acting accordingly. Whereas in this country, who cares? You never see things like that. But yes, there will be a time. Jesus said there'll be 2 women in one kitchen, and one will be gone and the other left. There'll be 2 men working in a field, he said, and one will be gone, the other left. I believe that.
There's a film actually called In the Heat of the Night, I think it's called that. Like a Thief in the Night.
Like a Thief in the Night,
yeah,
yes.
It was produced actually by a friend of mine, a guy called Ken Curtis.
Really?
And that particular...
Well, I want you to tell Ken Curtis he got it wrong. No, seriously, that whole film is putting it all before the big trouble.
Yeah.
And have you heard the word eschatology?
Yeah.
It's a horrible word.
The end times.
It means the study of the end times. Yeah. Well, I believe many Christians don't study eschatology, they study escapology. How can I get out of it? And frankly, there are an awful lot of Christians around the world who are trying to get out of the world and looking forward to getting out of it. But really, Jesus came into the world and he sends us into the world. That's a different outlook. Not, singing choruses at the bus stop till Jesus gets by and off we go. That is eschatology. Eschatology has a responsibility in it. It's not how you'll get out of things, but how you can go into them with Jesus.
Do we know when we may expect the return of Jesus? Do we know when it's likely to happen? And what are the signs that we might, which may indicate his return?
I've been having a lot of books sent to me recently telling me the date.
That's nonsense for a start.
One of the last was this thick, and the date was 1996. And it came from Mexico, of all places, and somebody there sent me this big volume to tell me to get ready for 1996. I haven't heard from him recently, for some reason. Martin Luther guessed the date. John Wesley guessed the date. Both of them were very wise. They guessed a date about 100 years ahead of them. And I would say that's very wise, because neither of them had to live to eat humble pie. Yeah. But then some of the cults are based on such dates. Jehovah's Witnesses, Seventh-day Adventists. And their leaders guessed a date. Both dates have already passed. And they've rationalized those dates in various ways. Very silly to date, when Jesus himself said, of that day or of that hour, nobody knows. No man knows, no angel knows, not even the Son of God knows. Father's keeping it a secret. In that case, I'm going to be very foolish to guess a date. However, if I'm right in saying that he gave us clear signs of his coming to watch for, then we can know approximately when he's coming, and increasingly know that it's near. The disciples did ask him, what will be the signs of your coming? And he gave a very simple, straight answer.
Matthew 24, wasn't it?
That's right. He gave them 4 very obvious, clear signs, of which, David, I can see 1.5 now. And with the speed of world events, the other 2.5 could come fairly quickly. But until they come, I'm not going to start dating. Now, either he's coming any minute, as those who believe in a secret rapture teach, or he's coming after the signs of his coming. We're not far from the central station in Newcastle here, and as a boy I used to go train spotting. And in those days it wasn't electric lights, the signals were the old arms, and they went down and up here for stop and down for go. And there were different signals we used to watch for. There was the distance signal, a yellow one with a forked end and black stripes on it. And when that went down, the train was a few miles away that we were waiting for. Then the home signal, which was a red one, that went down, and you knew the train was in the block, the last bit of railway line. And then the platform signal would go, and we would watch these signals and get cameras ready in what is the biggest railway crossing in the world in Newcastle, just by the old castle there. Mm-hmm. It's the biggest in the world, and all the trains go through. Now, you see, in the same way, Jesus said, watch. Watch. Now, unless he was telling us to watch for signs of his coming, how do you watch for Jesus' coming? Walk around all day looking into the clouds because that's where he was coming from? It would be rather foolish to do that. He told us, watch for these clear signs, and he gave us 4 basic ones. Do you want me to run through them?
Please, yes.
The first, he said, would be disasters in the world. And he said
there will be wars and
rumors of wars, famines, earthquakes. Some of those will be caused by humans, some by nature, but there will be disasters. And he said, don't be troubled. He said, these are the pains of birth, not death. They're the beginnings of a new universe to be born. So he said, don't be troubled when you read these things. Don't let your hearts panic. He said, these are the pains of childbirth, not the pangs of death. Now that's pretty important. When a Christian reads newspapers, earthquakes are increasing, doubling every 10 years, they tell me. Wars, there have been 36 major international wars since World War II, apart from civil wars. Famines, 1/3 of the world is starving at the moment, and another third are hungry. So that sign is clearly there. And he said the problem is that when the world is being shaken by disasters, false Christs claim to have the way out. And he said you'll have false messiahs, and we're getting plenty of those, believe me. And then the second sign, he said, was desertion in the church. He said, you will be hated in every nation. Now, that's not happened yet in church history, but it's very much nearer now than it was.
I heard a statistic yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, 250 people a week are leaving the Church of Scotland.
Yeah, I read a similar article. Church of England's losing 1,000 a week. It's the hemorrhage is enormous. But Jesus said, you will be hated. There will be pressure on the church. Persecution is coming. And I've been saying this for 10 years now, that persecution of Christians is going to be a fact of life in Britain. It's already begun. It's going to happen in every nation that Christians are going to come under pressure. You'll be hated by all nations. And the love of many, indeed he said most, will grow cold. So a lot of nominal Christians are going to leave the church. Those who just play at Christians on Sunday will leave. Those for whom the pressure's too much will leave.
Well, they have to because of the pressure. They're not going to take that
They will do it quite voluntarily. Yeah. They will just go. And, said Jesus, and the gospel will be preached to all the nations. Now, that seems a contradiction. Persecution, church numbers declining, and the gospel being preached to all the nations. But you know, David, wherever the church is persecuted in the world today, it's growing.
Yeah.
Wherever the pressure's on the church and you get rid of passengers and you boil it down to the real... Do you know, I heard of a prayer meeting in Russia years ago, and they were secretly meeting to pray, Christians, and 2 soldiers burst in with Kalashnikov guns and said, we're going to kill the Christians. And they thought they were drunk on vodka or something, and they got scared. And then the soldiers said, if you're not a Christian, get out. And half the prayer meeting ran. And then the soldiers put their guns down and said, now will you please tell us how to become Christians? And they said, we had to find out who was the real Christian first, and then you wouldn't betray us. Now that's going to happen, you see, and we need to be ready for it. And as the church under pressure is refined down to the real Christians, they get on with the job and they evangelize.
I'm actually going to Moscow very soon to do some drama workshops with
the Moscow. Well, of course, the situation has radically changed there. If you're in trouble, it won't be from the government. Anyway, that's the second sign. Now, that hasn't fully come yet. The church isn't yet persecuted in all nations. It will be, but not yet. The third sign is a dictator in the Middle East, this wretched man, the Antichrist, who sets himself up as God. We've seen this in other dictators, but the last one of all. He will be very plausible. It says he'll have the appearance of a lamb. He'll be very charming, very gracious. He will promise peace and security, and people will fall for it. And then he will turn. As Nero turned, as Hitler turned, they were all good in the beginning. And then they turned when power corrupted them. And Jesus said, that'll be in the Middle East. Those Christians who are near him, get away, get out of his reach. Just go, don't even bother to pack, flee, run. But the rest of you, in the rest of the world, he said, stay put, don't run anywhere, don't listen to rumors, watch. Don't trust your ears, trust your eyes.
We have 1 minute left for the fourth point.
And the fourth is darkness in the sky.
Yeah.
And the sun goes out, and the moon goes out, and the stars go out, and there's no natural light in the universe. And then suddenly there's lightning from the eastern horizon to the west. It's as if the house lights in the theater have been gone down, and suddenly the stage is lit up for Jesus returning. Now that hasn't happened yet for sure. And Jesus said, when you see all these things, you know that I am at the door, just about to step through and come back onto the stage of history.
Marvellous.
Those are the four.
David, once again, thank you very, very much for joining us. We'll see you again next week, where we'll be talking and discussing more of the same. And thanks to you at home for watching. Do join us again next week at the same time. But from now, from all of us here, from David and myself and the crew, may the Lord bless you and may the Lord keep you. Bye-bye for now.